if you're learning to play the harp and are new to reading music, it may feel overwhelming when you think of all the notes that you still need to learn. It can also be very frustrating when you're learning a new piece and you keep coming across notes that you still can't recognize easily. Many people instinctively do what we all tend to do when we cannot remember something, which is quickly grabbing a pen or pencil and writing it down. But could this be the quickest way to learn, or maybe it's just a quick fix? Hello there, I'm Zuzanna, I am a harpist and a harp teacher. In this video you'll hear me talking about how writing letters can influence your reading, why recognizing the notes is just part of learning to read music, and what other skill will help you read fluently even if you don't know all the notes yet. At the end of this video I will also share with you some alternative solutions that will help you learn to read music more fluently. So make sure you'll stay with me until the end because I've got a ton of great tips to share with you today. To understand a bit better how writing letters may affect your speed in reading music, we need to talk a little bit more about how music notation works. I often say that music notation is just like a language, with its own alphabet and symbols. And whenever I talk about this, I like to compare music to how the languages that we speak work and how we're learning them. Most of us start to learn with getting to know some letters or symbols, and probably at the beginning we learn just a few that are the most common, and then we learn to put together some short words and phrases that we likely know already, using just these few letters, like for example dog or go. And from the very beginning you learn how language is so much more than just the letters, and you see how they form patterns and words. Even though at first you likely need to read the words and phrases letter by letter, especially when you get some new symbols, very soon you will start seeing them coming together into whole words and patterns. I've been talking about this in more detail in one of the earlier episodes of the Coffee Break Harp, so if you want to learn more about this, I'll put a link for you here and in the description of this video. Now, just like any language, music has its own alphabet and notation, and also its own patterns. And these musical patterns don't really follow the ones that we know from our spoken language or from the alphabet that we use in the language we speak. When you look at this short excerpt from my arrangement of the Ash Grove, even if you don't know any of the notes left hand is playing in here, you will likely see right away that these four groups of notes look similar. They are not the same, but when I play them to you, you will likely notice that there is some kind of a pattern that you can hear, and also that my fingers are following a certain pattern too. This is not quite as easy to spot if we look just at the letters written underneath. The letters that we see don't form any recognizable words, and we can't really expect them to, but you also probably find it harder to see similarities between the four groups. If you know what to look for, you can spot that in this section you got quite a few G's, some B's, and also some D's when you look at the letters, and that could be the hint that these notes are quite important in this section, and that maybe it would be worth focusing on them and learning to recognize them in the music. But at the same time, you could run into some issues when you look, for example, at the D in the first group and the D in the last group. And of course, these strings do have a lot in common in music, but your fingers will need to know exactly which one of the two to go for, so that they can keep that original pattern. So as you can see, it is quite important that as you learn the names of the notes and learn to recognize them, you also learn to recognize the patterns. When you're aware of the basic patterns, it will often be enough for you to know just the one note that you start on, and then you will be able to find your way around the notes so much more quickly. That's why this is my first and most important tip. Learn about the patterns and how to spot them, because when you've got that skill, you don't need to read each and every single note anymore. When I teach reading music on the harp, my students begin to learn musical notation just like they would learn a new language with a new alphabet. So you will start by learning just a few notes at a time, along with the basic patterns that you could use them for, and then you will get to practice practice recognizing both the notes and the patterns through some specially designed exercises, so you get the time for that knowledge to sink in before we add more notes. And that's why my next tip will be to try to follow this approach in your own practice and focus on a smaller range of notes to start with. So pick some easy beginner pieces which cover a smaller range of strings on the harp. Perhaps you may want to look for pieces written for smaller harps, smaller than this one, like a 16-string harp or a 20-string harp. You can check the description of the pieces when you buy the music, because many composers will tell you ahead of time what is the range of their arrangements. When there are fewer notes to choose from, you are more likely to find more notes that you're familiar with and less of the ones that you're not so sure about. And this leads us to the tip number 3. As much as you can, try to write as few letters in as possible. So for example, if you spot a pattern where one of the notes is repeated again, don't write it in for the second time and try to remember and look ahead for this pattern to go back on the same string. If you find this very hard and you feel like you can hardly remember any of the notes, try to have at least 1, 2, maybe 3 notes for which you will commit not to write the letters in. Your first note could be the middle C, for example. If you feel like there are a lot of notes that you still can't recognize easily and you feel like you have to write everything in, this may mean that you're trying to do too much and maybe trying to learn too many new notes at once. It may be that you're simply becoming overwhelmed by all these new notes, and in that case you likely need to step back a little and maybe do some more simple exercises away from your pieces. This is something I actually recommend to everyone trying to learn to read music, because even though you're practicing reading music in the pieces that you play, with time you will likely memorize some of those pieces, and rereading the music in there will not help you progress with learning to read as much as you'd hope to. So that's why it's important to give yourself some extra opportunity to read new music with exercises that you will maybe play just that one time to get used to that feeling of reading new music. I shared some book suggestions for this kind of practice in one of my earlier videos, so do make sure you check it out. You will likely find some new resources in there. Earlier in this video, I promised you some alternative solutions to writing letters in music, and the first one is having on your music stand a cheat sheet with all the notes that you need. So if you're in doubt about one particular note, you can quickly glance at it, check the position on a line or space, and then go back to playing while looking back at the same note in your score and compare its position to the context of the rest of the piece and all the patterns around it. This cheat sheet is a part of my free video training on reading music that I will also put for you in the description of this video. And now for my final tips, which I hope many of you will find fun to do because they are all about colors and also some stationery. First, you can take advantage of the fact that on the harp we've got colored strings for the notes C and F, so you can grab a pair of highlighters, blue and red or pink, and mark all these notes that you still can't quite recognize in your music. Part of the difficulty with writing letters is that they are usually written above or below a note, so when you're reading a letter, you're very often actually not even looking at the note that it relates to. But with a highlighter, you can make sure that you can still see that note through and that you're actually still looking at it and where it's positioned in music. If you notice some notes that are particularly tricky to find, you can even grab a different color, for example green, and set your own color code for that note or notes. And while I perhaps wouldn't exactly recommend having a whole rainbow palette in all your music, I know that if you're a stationery fan like me, this can be hard to resist. If you've been struggling with reading music for a while and this sounds like a way to bring again some fun to your practice and for you to start finding some of these patterns, you may likely find colors to be more helpful than the letters. Because I will keep saying this again and again, recognizing patterns is one of the most important skills when it comes to reading music, and being able to spot them is what will make the biggest difference to your fluency, probably even bigger than trying to learn all the notes at once. So I'd say that while having all the notes marked in colors may be perhaps a little bit much and not making things easy to see, if you're a visual learner, you may find that adding a little extra color in your score will help you see these patterns more easily. And in that case, I'm all in, because I really do believe that learning to recognize patterns is the key to reading music fluently. You can now learn all about the basic patterns through my online course, Reading Music for Harp, which I will link to in the description of this video. you. In this course, I not only teach you the basics of music theory and the most common patterns, but you also get to learn these patterns in practice through some special exercises that will also help you get better at all the other important skills like looking ahead, playing in rhythm, putting hands together, as well as planning to learn a new piece and strategies for approaching them. If this sounds like something you want to be able to do and you want to learn new pieces with more freedom and confidence, make sure you check it out. Follow the link in the description of this video to learn more about the course and how to enroll. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which of these tips have you found helpful, and most importantly, which are you going to try in your next practice session? Let me know in the comments. I'll be looking forward to hearing from you and to seeing you here very soon for another episode of the Coffee Break Harp. Make sure you subscribe so you get notified when the next episode is out, and if you found this video helpful, give it a like and let me know in the comments. I'll see you here very soon. Take care for now. Bye!